Welcome back to Bay Sunday. I'm Alan Martin, filling in for you this weekend. Please welcome from KQED's Forum the author of Let There Be Laughter, a treasury of great Jewish humor and what it all means. Michael Krasny, we listen to you as often as we can.
Religiously,
every day. I would hope so. And
nice to be with you, Alan.
Thank you so much. The topic of this book, why did you decide to tackle it, or was it a case of why not?
Maybe more the why not, but I had a great treasure trove of Jewish jokes, and I thought maybe I should put this into some kind of textual form. I also want to talk about what they meant. You know, this was really interesting to me as a long-time
So
teacher.
Context.
Well, content, but particularly analytical. I hate to use that fancy-sounding word, but this is what I do with news all the time, and this is what I do as a literature professor of many years. And I thought, these are narratives. They have meaning in them. And what does that meaning tell us, not only psychologically, but culturally and historically? And it tells us, it turns out, a great deal.
So why is it that the Jewish religion or culture can be so funny, you know, mothers and marriages and, you know, guilt and that whole thing?
Well, you find a lot of reasons behind the question that you've asked, having to do with a few thousand years of being around and stereotypes and archetypes that have existed all this time. I also think there's a great deal in the culture. It used to be, well, this humor came out of suffering, and to some extent that's true, but it also comes out of memory, and particularly when it hybridizes with American culture.
The jokes, the press release says that you know more Jewish jokes than anyone else on the planet.
I've never been able to empirically verify that. And this is what's known, I suppose, as selling a book. I have heard that, and people have said that when I go into Joke Jags, but I think it's impossible to find out if that's true, and it probably isn't. There's an old Talmud saying, make me more than I am and you make me less.
Well, you cover more than just the, you know, a priest and a rabbi go into a bar, although there's probably plenty of those.
A few of those.
Yeah, there are a few of those too. But the jokes cover such a variety of life.
And not only of life, but really of American experience. I mean, there's especially, there's a lot, of course, of the folklore and the stuff that comes out of the shtetl, the old world of Eastern European Jewry, Ashkenazi Jewry. But there is really an extraordinary canvas here of Jewish comics, stand-up comics who dominated for years and still do in some ways, not like they used to, but also people who write comedy, people who make comedic films, people who are behind the scenes in so much of what I guess you could call the humor business.
What did you find when you started to look into the jokes and, of course, the way they're perceived, the way they're delivered, but more perceived? I mean, it's a fine line between offending someone and making them laugh. Let's just say it. I mean, I'm sure some people find them anti-Semitic, and they don't care for that kind of humor.
No, you're right. And there are people who don't care for humor that's cutting edge or that deals with forbidden subjects or all that sort of thing. You kind of have to go by your inner Geiger counter here. The thing I had going for me was the fact that I was analyzing these jokes, so I could tell a joke and say, you know, it's misogynistic, but let's explore it even deeper because it may have other things in it than just misogyny or just, you know, what seems to be putting down women. And indeed, you find that with a lot of these jokes. They're two-edged. They can be, on the one hand, maybe critical of, in a stereotypical way, but at the same time maybe saying something much more positive, too.
So, growing up, were you part of a funny family? Did you have to be the class clown? What was it like?
No, my family was all that funny, but we appreciated humor, and I was, for a while, I suppose, what you call the class clown. I went to Roosevelt Junior High, and it was a big accomplishment to be the funniest kid in the 9th grade, or voted that. Then I began to be more of an intellectual. I lost a lot of my sense of humor, I think, or it got eroded.
Too much book work.
Well, you know, you start being a scholar like I was, and you start, you know, going into these other worlds of interest and building careers and so forth. But I always kept my interest in it, and I always kept my curiosity about it, and I always collected jokes.
Before we run out of time, I want to ask you to give a little plug here. Tell us about the event that's coming up for the Kidney Foundation.
Love to plug it. I've been the MC for many years, except when I'm an author, and this year I'm an author. Kelly Corrigan, a former student of mine at San Francisco State, whom many of your viewers may know, who's an author also, will be filling in for me as MC. But we've got Jerry Rice there, who's written a book. We have Calvin Trillin, who I'm going to be with at an event on the 24th at the Herbst Theater, the famous writer for The New Yorker, and he's got a kid's book out. Famous astronaut Mike Masatsima, and just a Persian cookbook author. It's always a wonderful event, a very high caliber event, and an event that people will love to be at.
I would be remiss to not ask you to tell a joke or two. Is there such a thing as do you have a favorite joke?
I have favorite jokes, but you know, I've been telling these jokes now, and I promised Akilah I'd tell some jokes I haven't told that much on on
No
Weekend
repeats?
Edition or on my own show with Mina Kim or any of the newspaper articles. There are a couple of jokes that I did say when this book came out, tell me a joke, anybody, that I've never heard. And I actually got a couple that I hadn't heard, and I'll tell you those two.
Okay.
Because they're really great jokes. I wish that, well, let me put it this way. The galleys were out, so I got them in the book anyway.
Okay.
So the first one is about a rabbi giving a sermon, and he notices someone in the synagogue on a Friday night who looks very unhappy, and goes up to him after. He's a compassionate man, and the rabbi that is, and says, tell me, there's something bothering you, isn't there? He said, well, Rabbi, yes. He said, I meet these women on the internet, or I'm introduced to them, and I fall in love. After dating out, I bring them home to my mother, and every single one of them she doesn't like and rejects. The rabbi says, I got an idea for you. Next time you go online, find a woman who has similar interests to you, maybe, more importantly, similar interests to your mother, and maybe has ways of perhaps talking and communicating with your mother. Great idea, Rabbi. 3 weeks go by. He's out there again in the congregation looking even more doleful and unhappy. Rabbi says, what happened? Did you follow my advice? Yes, I followed your advice. And I found a woman who had common interests with my mother, even talked like my mother, cooked like my mother, looked like my mother. What was the problem? My father hated her.
Okay, we're out of time. The second one's going to have to wait till next time.
Good Catskills type humor.
That's great stuff, Michael. Thanks.
Thanks. Good
so
to be
much.
with you, Alan.
All right, for more information about the National Kidney Foundation's Author Luncheon, sponsored by KPIX5, log on to authorsluncheonsf.org, authorsluncheonsf.org. We'll be back with more Bay Sunday with Kenny Choi right after this break.
We got a tease for the next time we do.
We got to do it again.
The second joke.
Yeah, we got to do it again.
New